One of these days I will clean off my desk and it will stay cleaned off. I made that face because I know that's probably not going to happen, but I'm still like, okay, I can hope.
You want electrolytes or anything?
So are you where you could see if I send you a picture at the same time as you're watching or no?
Yeah. If are you gonna send it to me through email? Because I could see it on my phone.
Yep.
Okay.
So I'm going to send you this first one. If it'll let me send it, that would be cool. That way you can kind of see what I'm looking at too
Mhm.
while we're talking about it. All right. So I just sent that one. So what's interesting is as I was drawing the starseed cards, which are these really light pale cards.
I have those.
Oh, do you? Okay. Well, then you'll be familiar with some of them then.
Yeah.
I love them. They're some of my favorite cards. They're not I like, well, you'll see, I like really dark, bold cards. But when I came across those on Amazon, I was like, oh, I need those. I need those. So yeah, they're some of my favorite cards. So in this one,
I'm trying to refresh it, but I haven't gotten it yet.
Okay. It'll come across in a minute, hopefully.
Okay.
So I think it's really funny that in this one, I drew starseed cards for each of these lives.
Mhm.
I wasn't going to, I felt like just the middle one needed it, but then one flung out for that side. And so I just was like, okay. Oh, there is a ton of twos.
Okay, I just got it.
So this life right here is affecting you right now pretty badly because you didn't get to finish. So there's a lot of things you had to accomplish with the life I'm talking about here.
Mhm.
That your soul feels like it has to do this time. Do you have a problem making decisions on which way to go with things, or you feel like you have to do everything all the time? You have to do too much?
Yeah, I do have a problem with making decisions a lot.
So this one is not the one directly before this one, it's before that. So it's two back.
Uh-huh.
And I'm gonna put this one somewhere in what would be like northern Germany, like northeastern Germany. And I'm just gonna say right off the bat, you didn't live very long in this one. You didn't get to finish things. And it wasn't, I keep hearing the words not fair. You have a hard time being happy, don't you?
Yep.
So this one was a very hard life for you, and I'm going to sugarcoat a few things just because it was a very hard life for you. So this is one where you were born a woman here as well, but the area that you were born in, and I'm going to say this was probably around the late 1700s, early 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
The area you were born in, it wasn't a good thing to be a woman there. And there's some reason for this, and your parents made you dress, look, feel, be a boy, hide that you were a girl. So that's still affecting you. And that there are times when, even though you want to be a girly girl, you feel like you have to be really tough. So you can't completely be a girly girl because you have to be really tough. So you have that inner war a lot with it. It's not that you don't feel like yourself. It's just that you feel like you have to project this other thing that's not really you. So in general, you lived your whole childhood pretending to be a boy. The only time you could ever be yourself and be a girl was at night after, nobody was around. It was just, your family at home and so on. You had 2 other sisters too here. So there were 3 of you girls. There are 3 of you girls and there's one boy, and the boy is the oldest. You're the youngest here. And all of your sisters were the same way. Your parents said they had 4 boys. Like all of you were boys, period. And I can't see why. But every time I try to see why, or I try to pinpoint why, it's like this really, it's dangerous. It's not safe. So there's something that made them have to do this. So you always felt very disconnected because you were the baby. And I get that you were probably pretty far behind the others, where the others, it's like boom, 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 boom. And then you were back here.
Yeah.
So you always felt alone because you didn't have anybody to really play with. Everybody's older than you, don't want to play with you. And then you always felt locked in because you were the youngest. So you always felt cooped up, like in that cage, like that bride in the cage there. Because of what was going on, and because of you having to be kept under wraps as being who you actually were, you felt like that not fair aspect, but you also felt you were always searching for something, because you were searching for who you were. You were searching for what was being kept from you, because you guys could always hear your parents whispering about stuff, but you never knew what was going on. So you may or may not also have been just a little bit ornery. And not only did you not want to be there, like be cooped up in that anymore, you have this hunger to find out things you shouldn't find out. So this, you don't need to know this, made you want to know it even more. Whereas your sisters were content to be protected and live like that.
Mm-hmm.
You snuck out a few times. What sucks is that third time is what ended up. You basically disappeared whenever, I'm gonna say you were probably about 13 or 14. And your parents never knew what happened to you. You snuck out to figure out, basically to go outside and play, to figure out what was going on, to explore, because you weren't allowed to go anywhere at all without somebody with you.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that took you, that ended up ending your life really early, it's almost like a group, a band of. What's funny is I think that probably you still have a problem with these types of people. They either make you very angry for no reason, or you remove yourself from the room or from their vicinity very quickly. These are like very, very big, huge, tall men. Most of them are like more blonde with long hair, and they just have those big square jaws. Like they're not what you would think a Viking would look like or anything like that. They're just scary. They're just scary looking men.
Yeah.
So do you have an aversion to men that look like that?
Well, I like personally for me, just in general, men kind of make me uncomfortable. Like I don't like being around them.
I mean, I could see that. So what sucks about this is that you did not get to accomplish a few things. You did not get to accomplish finding out there in every life we have things we're supposed to find out. So that knowledge card upside down right off the bat tells me that you missed a lot of things you were supposed to have learned in this life. You also missed changing into who you're supposed to be, because the way your parents had to keep you protected and keep you under wraps, it kept you in this little box of this is who you have to be. So you never got to experience anything beyond that box. So I would bet you also have a constant need to change, to switch things up, whether it's just rearranging your furniture, rearranging your closet, or shifting jobs from like one extreme to the, like you need constant change. It also kept you from discovering a lot about yourself. And when I say that, I mean more the things you can do, your talents, your skills, etc. I mean, this kept you from a lot. It kept you from being connected to the earth. I mean, you have two grounding cards here that are upside down. Well, one's upside down and one's sideways. So you have a problem staying grounded, staying anchored to one place, which also that change thing doesn't help. You also have a problem. You have a problem with people that want to nurture you. And you have a problem with nurturing other people, because this affected you so much. Even though your parents were good parents, you never got that nurturing, showing affection or whatever, like they would for girls in public, because you had to be a boy. So you never got that nurturing aspect with your family. So do you have a hard time now when people say that they care about you or they try to do things for you?
Yeah, like anything affectionate, it makes me uncomfortable.
I mean, this one's affecting you really, really deeply, really, really deeply. So I'd bet you also have that general feeling of it's not fair, even when you don't know what's not fair. It's just like it hits you too hard. Like, I know this isn't fair. I know this isn't fair, but you don't know why it's not fair. You just feel that way. Yeah, this one, I can see why this one came out first. This one's really, because you had gifts that you couldn't step into here. You had knowledge you didn't get to get here. You didn't get that nurturing aspect. You have a problem with staying grounded. I mean, this one's really, really throwing you off kilter. And I think some of it is your soul's kind of mad at itself for not listening, for causing this early demise. You have a fear of dark spaces, little enclosed dark spaces.
Yeah.
Well, you can totally blame this life altogether for all of that shit. Because this one was pretty rough on you. Really rough on you. Interesting. So how was your family growing up this life?
Like my life right now.
Yep.
Kind of chaotic.
Well, I'm starting to see now. So these cards here, the last ones, they look like this. So they're usually the last ones in the line. When I was drawing these, there was one that flipped out on its own, and I'm just leaving it there because I was like, okay, that's really interesting. So I'm just leaving it there, and I'm gonna look at it last because that tells me it's something specific that you still have to heal from to deal with from some of these. So and you had to start off with a hard one right off the bat. Oh no, it's a scam likely call. I should totally answer that. They could be trying to sell me mortgage insurance for a house that I don't have. All right, so I'm gonna send you the next one here. All right, was that it?
No, that was another email. It should send in a little bit though.
So this one's a little better. Let me say that right off the bat. So I'm curious, are you a very pessimistic person? Like you always think the bad right up front?
Yeah.
I just asked because like that was a pretty rough one to start out with. Usually those end up like in the second or third one. So I was like, okay, we're just gonna get the hard shit right out of the way. Okay. This one's a lot better. This one's a lot better. It's a lot older. It's a lot older. So this one right here is back in about the 8th century. It's pretty far back there. But it's kind of hard for me to see where. So I'm almost thinking that it's not here because there are parts of it that look Egyptian, but there are parts of it that look more like Mayan or Aztec.
Mm-hmm.
But I also can't see how you were born here. So I'm going to just put this one as not here. So we'll just say what would be our 8th century is about when this one happened. So in this one, you were born female as well. This life, you had a very long, very, I'm going to say drawn out, but it's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
As your childhood, like you had a very, very long childhood in this one. I'm gonna say that the timeline, like life wise, you know how usually humans right now live to be, their 90s or 80s or 90s.
Yeah.
This one I feel is much longer than that, and just because of how long the childhood aspect is, I would say that that's probably 3 or 4 times as long as what we would consider a child now. So anywhere from like 5 to 12, like that's only about 7 years. This right here is more like 30 years of being around that, what we would consider a child.
Oh.
The good thing about it is you really got to be a child. You really got to have a happy childhood here. And I think I see why this one came after that first one, because this one affected that first one pretty deeply, and that you had already experienced this life. And so you knew how it was to have a long, elongated, nice childhood. So when you had none in that last life that we just talked about, it really affected you really deeply. Part of what sucks about this one, there's good and there's bad with having that long childhood, because in having that long childhood, you got to experience being truly happy, being relaxed, being playful, all of those things. But that sacrifice card, is the anchor card, tells me that with every person, every soul being, whatever it is, during this area, this lifetime, they get that long childhood, but they have to make the conscious decision to sacrifice it to move forward. With you, I love that the first two cards in front of that anchor card is obstacles and the labyrinth, which are more obstacles upside down. So that tells me that you were very intelligent about it when you made that decision to sacrifice and move forward into being a teenager, adult, whatever, because I don't see a lot of teenage aspects. So like with this one, it's like you're a child and then you decide you don't want to be a child anymore, and then you're like a young adult. There's no real teenager aspect there. It's just like is or isn't.
Yeah.
So you have to make this sacrifice to move forward. I would bet you probably stayed in that childhood aspect a little longer than most of the beings around you, because whenever you stepped into the adult aspect, you didn't have a lot of things to overcome here. At the same time, I think you actively chose not to deal with some of the things there, because there's no obstacles here. There's no running in circles. There's none of those cycles that you get in as an adult that you don't realize you're in until you realize you have to break out of them. But there's also the loosen your grip card and the emotional challenges, and the emotional challenges is upside down. So it tells me when you made this decision to move into this adult aspect, you sacrificed a lot more than just moving from that happy, do whatever phase to adulthood.
Yeah.
So when you sacrifice that, you had a very firm grip on what you were doing, which also tells me that in moving to that adult role, part of what you sacrificed, it's almost like when I'm talking. So when I do these and I lay all these cards out and I look over them, it's like I get all of it within about 5 or 10 seconds. And then I have to go back through and unpack it as I'm looking at the cards. But with this in particular, it's interesting because as I'm going through each card, it's like it's unpacking, but it's also unpacking backwards. I don't know how to explain it. It's really weird. And I sound crazy, and it is what it is. But when you made this decision to sacrifice that kid aspect to move to the adult aspect, there were certain paths you could choose. And I get that there were probably only 3 paths that you had to choose from at this point. And the one you chose was very unique in that while there were no obstacles and no cycles to be in, it's almost like you chose to be a very spiritual soul, whether it was a spiritual leader of some type or whatever it is. You chose to be something very spiritual, because that inner peace card there tells me you had a very tight grip on yourself spiritually for having that full inner peace. But you had a very tight control on it as well, because that loosen your grip card right there tells me you had a solid amount of control on it. The emotional challenges goes right along with those other things. You didn't have the normal challenges that the adults of that species would have. But you also have the speak your truths card over here as a healing card, but you have the laying the foundations is upside down. So that tells me that this life that I'm talking about right here affects you now, and that you've got to learn to speak your truths a lot more solid. You did a great job with them here, because the things that came out of your mouth in this life were those like Buddhist pearls of wisdom that were just very small little things, but when you said them, they were very profound. And I think those still rattle around your brain a lot. You just can't words, you know what I mean? It's like, I know they're here, but I can't get them to come out correctly. So you've got to learn to speak your truths a lot more solidly in this life. The laying the foundations card being upside down tells me that it's kind of a double-edged sword here. Because you didn't have foundations in this life, you just stepped into it. That's kind of how you feel in the life you're in now, that you should be able to just step into the role you want. So it goes hand in hand with that speak your truths, because you've got to learn to speak your truths and find some inner peace before you can step into that. I actually don't think that you need to lay a lot of foundations in the life you're in right now. You have them in there. It's just unlocking them. It's just finding them. So I kind of see why this life popped up when it did, because I think you needed to hear that. Yeah, do research. Yeah, do your legwork. Yeah, do some of those things, but you don't have to lay as much foundationally as other people do to get where you want to get. Where some people have to struggle and claw and work really hard, you're going to be one of those people that when you start speaking your truth and you start allowing yourself to have, I don't know why I'm yawning, allowing yourself to have that inner peace, the foundations that you had already built through all of this will pretty much rise up to meet you. So you're going to be that person that everything spiritually comes really easy to you, and other people are going to sit there and be trying to compare themselves like, well, she's only been on her journey for like 2 years or whatever it is. I've been on mine for 10. Why am I not there? Like, you're going to be that person. So you are going to have a lot of people that are going to be very jealous of where you are because they've been on their path longer or whatever. And it may be because they're not learning what they're supposed to be learning, or it's just not their path to get to that point. But you have a younger soul. You have a lot going on, and that's why, because you have a younger soul. I would pinpoint that you probably have had about 80 different lives.
Oh.
It sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
But most people have around the 100 to 150 mark. I mean, I've met 2 different people that had more in the thousands. Older souls usually have more in like 200-300s, but you have a younger soul. That's why that hard life came up first. That's why this life came up first. Every single life, and I can't wait to see this last one. Every single life you have is an extreme in one form or another. There's no half-ass. So I think that's why you're frustrated right now, because I feel a lot of frustration from it right now when you're listening to these. Why can't I just do that? Why can't I just do that? So I can see where the frustration is coming from. So I'm curious, how old are you now?
I'm 20.
Okay. So you're having a hard time trying to find your path?
Yeah, well, I wanted to give this reading also because I've been interested in just learning like more like spiritual wise, and my brother's girlfriend got a past life reading from you, so that's why she had recommended me, and then I got it. So
we'll tell her thank you.
She's right next to me right now.
Well, thank you. So she's listening to all of this?
Yeah.
That's funny. So is she agreeing with it? Like, yeah, you totally do that.
There's been a lot of little parts I was just like, oh, that makes sense.
That's usually what happens is when you get a past life reading, especially if you let someone else listen to it, they're like, that's why you do
Yeah.
that shit. A lot of times you don't even realize you do the shit. Well, I'm dying to see this one, and then I'm dying to see that single card over there too. Oh, I forgot. This is the one that had to draw like 50 cards out of that one deck. Do you remember your dreams?
I remember more of my dreams when I was younger than now, but now I don't really dream as often, but when I do, I remember them kind of. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm just going to tell you right now, it's because you're doing some shit in your dreams. You're traveling and you don't know you're traveling. Oh, I guess I can send this picture to you. I'm like, so when you get this picture, I'm like, you could send it first. Like, she can't see it if you don't send the shit. Okay. All right, so I sent this last one to you. So this one, here's what's funny. So that first life we talked about was 2 before this one.
Mhm.
And then the second life we talked about was like way the hell back there. This one right here is the one right before this one. So it's like we went here, back, and then right here.
Yeah.
There's a lot in this one. So when it comes to things that you're drawn to, you know, some people are drawn to like Egyptian and some people are drawn to like, you know, Asian or whatever it is. When it comes to things you're drawn to, are you more drawn to the South American aspect of spirituality? And I don't mean Spanish. I mean the South American aspect of spirituality. Or have you looked into it much? Hey, thank you, sir.
I don't think I've really looked into that as much.
Okay. I would advise you to. This is like the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Incans, things like that.
Mhm.
I don't think the warrior aspect so much as the spirituality aspect of it. So this life right here is what is in Peru. It's Peru now.
Mhm.
You have a very feminine soul. You have a very feminine soul. So you were born a woman here as well. You had an interesting mark when you were born. Not only did you have an interesting mark when you were born, but it was one that your parents didn't so much try to hide it as they just kind of tried to ignore it and hope it went away. But it was really visible. Like I want to say it was on your forehead or it was somewhere very, very visible. But you had an insane gift right from the beginning. Like from the time you could talk, you just knew things. You just knew things. And I think your parents kind of shut it down a little bit because you saw things that you would tell them, you know, this is going to happen, or I saw this happen, or I saw this or this.
Yeah.
And then it would happen and it got to where it scared them. So it's not that they shut it down because they were worried about, like now, it's getting better now, but the last couple of generations, that was weird. You didn't say those things, you know, you just have a great imagination, or you just saw a movie or something. In this life in particular, it kind of scared them a little bit. And so they told you, and I think why it scared them is because they were afraid that you'd be taken to a temple or, you know, something like that, where a lot of cultures had rules that if you had a child that had a specific mark, if they had specific abilities or whatever, they were to be given to the church, to the temple, etc., to be trained as a priest or priestess or a seer, whatever the term was.
Yeah.
So your parents kind of told you to hide that, to not say as much, because they didn't want to lose you. As a parent, I completely understand. I would probably tell my kid the same thing, like, hey, just tell me those things, like, don't be telling other people. But the thing is, you thought you took it wrong and you thought it was a bad thing. And so you stopped saying things, and people around you, when they got hurt, you felt really horrible about it. That's where that guilt card comes from. You still kind of carry some of that guilt. And the last thing that it's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back is that something happens to your father here. And you knew about it and you didn't say anything because you didn't want your parents to get mad at you. You didn't want to, you know what I mean? Like, you didn't want to, because I see you being only about 7 or 8 when this happens. It's like, if you said it, it became real. And then when it happened and you lost your father, you still carry that guilt. So I would bet there are still times in this life that you feel guilty about stuff you didn't even have a part of. Like, you weren't even in the room when something happened, or you had no, you know what I mean? I would bet even things, you see things on TV or you see things on the news or whatever, that there's no way you had anything to do with it, but you still kind of feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
So what I love is that this was a shifting point for you, because it was a shifting point, good and bad. It was a shifting point, bad, that you lost your father, and bad that when you told your mom about it a few weeks later, she got mad because she felt like you kept that information and it could have saved. So she harbored a lot of resentment toward you. That's the bad side of it. The good side of it is someone overheard you saying to your mother, you knew this was going to happen and this is how it happened, because it's one of the things where nobody was really around when it happened. And so there were some questions, but you were like, no, this. Yeah. And it made a lot of sense. So somebody hears that in passing, and then they tell somebody else in passing, and then they tell somebody else. And it like roundabout gets back to the spiritual leader. And the spiritual leader ends up seeking you out, coming to find you or whatever. So I would bet too that you harbor some resentment towards your mom, even when you don't realize why you're harboring resentment in this life, because your mom willingly gives you over after protecting you up to this point. When you're about 8, she's like, fine, here. It's like, she's really just butthurt about what happened. Yeah. So I would bet that you harbor resentment now toward your mom or any kind of mother figure, just because you feel like she should have still protected you and not let you go. But this is the good side, is that it's a very, very good thing for you. And I see now why there's 3 of those cards that had to draw, because when you go to live in the temple with, there's several other kids here of varying ages, you finally feel like you're at home. Like, you finally feel like you belong there. Even from the moment you step into the buildings there, you feel like this is where you belong. It's like, this is home. This is where I belong. And I think you're still looking for that feeling right now, that you feel it pretty deeply. Even when you're around people that absolutely love you, you still feel like you're waiting for somebody to come and take you home. Yeah. The Jaguar energy there tells me that when you get there, this home, this safety allows you to fully get, even at a young age, even at 8, 9, 10 years old, you fully get an amazing amount of clarity on your path in life. This is one thing too that I hate. I'm glad that there's a lot of places that are starting to open up to different substances. And I don't so much mean like mushrooms or whatever, but there's a whole bunch of different herbs that have been used around the world for journeying, spiritual journeying. And being done with a spiritual leader, a shaman, a priest, or whatever. They guide you on these journeys to help open up your skills and open up your gifts and so on. So even as a young teenager, gaining this clarity and this way of organizing yourself spiritually through those journeyings opened you up like boom. I don't know if you've got your email yet with the cards, and I don't want to hold the card up yet. I'm like waiting, but
Yeah, I got it.
okay. So the hippogriff card right there tells me that you fully stepped into who you were supposed to be. The toad tells me this was a massive rebirth for your soul. It's one that you felt, even though you were really young when this happened in this life, you felt it so deeply that it's going to affect you in almost every other life going forward. You're going to strive to get back to that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
The raven upside down tells me that it flipped everything you had thought either about yourself, your abilities, your skills, whatever. It flipped them over. So whereas you grew up thinking it was something to be hidden, it flipped it over into, no, you have to share this. The cracked open card right there, this is one of your high points of your soul. This life right here, even though it started off a little wonky, this part right here was one of the highlights, the best times that your soul has had. And I don't mean like, oh, you had all this money and stuff like that. You felt you were absolutely spiritually connected like you had never been before. So your soul is going to be striving to get back to those things from now on. So in this life, your next life, etc., this is going to drive you forward to trying to figure out where you're supposed to be, where you're going, etc. The reason that I said you're doing some stuff in your sleep is because when I see that light codes card there, that's the travel card, the astral travel card. That tells me that when you've been sleeping, you're not here. you're doing some traveling. So on the nights when you don't dream or you don't remember it, is it just completely black? Or do you wake up with a feeling or anything like that? Or is it just absolutely nothing?
It's just nothing. Like I just go to sleep and then I just wake up.
Yeah. Are you usually exhausted when you wake up?
Sometimes, yeah.
So it will run the gamut between being exhausted and being exhilarated. Because the exhausted ones are the ones when you're really doing like your powerhouse lifting the universe. And then the ones where you're exhilarated, that's when you have just busted through something, some spiritual aspect of yourself or your soul, whatever. You've been traveling and you've learned something amazing. So it's going to rotate between those two because your soul, especially with this being your life before this, it's kind of an all or nothing thing here. The solitude sideways is interesting because this life here is what started to teach your soul that it's okay to be around other people that are spiritually connected like you are. So you're going to seek those people out in all of your lives from here on. One thing that I do love is that the healing card here is a frequency card. So that's 417. That's to help you cleanse some traumatic experiences and to let go of some things that you've been holding on to, both in this life now and with your soul in general. So even only being 20, I'll bet you feel a lot older than other people your age, don't you?
Yeah.
So growing up, did you always have friends that were older, or were you always drawn to older kids?
Yeah, I would hang around like my sister's friends mostly, and they were all older. I don't know, I just clicked more with like older people, and like growing up, I got told a lot that I was really mature for my age.
This last life right here, it rocketed your soul forward because you found exactly where you were supposed to be. You walked the path you were supposed to walk. You lived out a very, very happy, very spiritual aspect to life that most people don't get the chance to do. one of the wonderful things about it is whatever it was you did that unlocked this travel part of your soul, don't shut it off. There's going to be some people that'll be like, oh, you shouldn't be astral traveling and blah, blah, blah. And normally I've told people that, like, you don't need to be astral traveling or whatever. However, your soul unlocked that gift, unlocked that ability. And I think that it's something that you need to try to hone and try to be able to do on purpose instead of just doing when you're sleeping. Because when you can do it on purpose, like learn to do it on purpose. So when you go to bed, you know you're going to be traveling. You know, I know I'm going to be doing this. I want to do this. I need to accomplish these things, or I need to learn this or whatever. If you can train yourself to do that in this life, you'll unlock a lot more of this, where you're opening up more knowledge and more aspects of your soul and gifts in this life. You actually lived a very long time in this last life, a very, very long time. And I would put this one, I would really put this one probably, I'm going to say like 1860s, 1860s. I wanted to say, or early 1870s, but as soon as it started to come out of my mouth, it went, nope. So I would say mid 1860s was when you were born in this life. And you lived to be, I would say, in your early 80s. So I would definitely start looking into holistic remedies, herbal teas, things like that, because your soul is used to that from the life right before this. Your soul is also used to a lot of energy work. And so have you found out many of your gifts in this life yet?
No, not really.
Do you have a very strong intuition, even if you don't trust it?
Yes.
Start working on trusting it, because that's part of who your soul is. So start working on trusting it. So one of the main things I recommend for that is, this is what I did, and I tell people tweak it however you want, but this worked for me because I have such an analytical brain that if I just write something in a book, even though I know when I wrote it and I know that date's correct, I'm always like, well, somebody could just say I wrote that yesterday. So I always have to overthink shit. So I created a fake email address I don't use for anything else but emailing myself. And so when my intuition hits me, when something happens, or I wake up, or, like I just know something's going to happen, I will email it to myself. That way it always has a time and a date stamp on it. And at first, when you start doing this, you'll just have a general thing like Bob's going to get in a car wreck tomorrow, or Bob's going to get in a car wreck soon. And then it will start honing down into, okay, Bob's going to get in a red car at this intersection at this. I mean, it'll start focusing, because the more you do it and the more that you trust yourself enough to write it down. And then when those things happen, it'll teach you what parts of that intuition or that vision or whatever it is need to be strengthened, and it'll start strengthening them on purpose without you even really doing anything. It's learning to trust yourself and making your brain go, oh shit, she's going to pop quiz me, so your brain will start to pick out more and more and more. So it will start building that intuition more and more and more. So I would highly recommend starting to do something like that for yourself. So when your gut hits you, even if, you start dating somebody and, you're sitting there and everything's great, but you look over at them and you're like, we're only going to date for like 3 months, right?
Yeah,
Send that to yourself. You know what I mean? Like, even if your brain's like, that is so fucking stupid that I just thought that, send it to yourself. There's a reason that popped in your head. The good thing about it is that it will make your intuition skyrocket. So, and then when somebody questions you, you can go, nope, here's the email with the time and the date on it. So now I got to look at this other card. Well, that's interesting as shit. Okay. So remember when I told you there was a card that flopped out and I was kind of waiting to see?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what's funny is it's the rebirth card, but it's upside down. So I think it's hilarious because I am just telling you, you needed to get back to this aspect. So instead of being a rebirth, you need to get back to this last aspect of this last life that you had. So the fact that that card's upside down cracks me the fuck up. And I actually really love that you're so young, that you have so much time ahead of you to get back to this. I don't think it's going to take you very long. And I don't think, well, like I said, in that, I think the life before this one that it's going to be, or the life, I don't remember which one, the second one, I think, where I told you that you're going to step into this path without even working very hard to do it. And other people around you are going to be really jealous because they're not going to understand. They're just going to see that you're young and you're you're light years ahead of where they are.
Yeah.
But it's because you've already lived through an amazing amount of shit. Your soul has.
Mm-hmm.
They don't see that. They're just going to see, oh my God, she's only 25 and she's already this far along and I'm 50 and I'm not, So you are going to have to steel yourself a little bit and be prepared for some of that jealousy because it's going to come your way. But this is awesome. I always love after I get to the third one and I'm like, I see why this one had to be the last one. So what kind of questions do you have? Or do you have any right now?
Right now, I can't really think of any questions.
Oh, didn't you want to?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe she can ask you about, or she can say something about it.
What's
Or
that?
you don't want to do it anymore.
No, I mean, I do. I just don't know how to ask.
I have this mark.
And, like,
Don't know how to ask what?
wait, about.
Yeah, just the mark. See if anything pops up from it.
Yeah, I have 2 marks on me, and then I just want to know if that means anything. I have a mark on my eyeball. I think it's the left one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on my left eyeball, and then I have another one on one of my toes.
So is it on your iris or is it on your, where's it at?
The white part.
It's on the white part of my eye.
I think it's really funny that you say that because I just said that in that last life, you had some kind of mark that was very visible up in here.
Yeah, that's what I thought of when you mentioned that. I was like, I do have a mark on my eye and I don't know what it is or what it means or where it comes from.
I would love to see a picture of it. I'm not going to lie, because it's really funny that you mentioned that. I fell down the rabbit hole yesterday in doing some research. It started off doing some research for somebody else. And well, it kind of morphed from one thing to the other. I was doing my makeup yesterday and I look in a magnifying mirror every day because I'm getting old and my eyes fucking suck anymore. I noticed my eyes were different, and I noticed, so in my left eye, I've always had these weird things. It's like, when you look at a picture of like a witch's circle or the 4 corners or whatever,
Yeah.
I have a dot in every corner.
Oh, okay.
Well, now I have brown dots in other places. My eyes are green. They've always been green. Now I have a weird thing on both sides where it's almost like a keyhole part. That's changed. So then I started falling down the rabbit hole because I was like, well, what the fuck does that mean? What's going on here? And then I had somebody else reach out to me yesterday. I was like, hey, my daughter was born with a keyhole iris. What does that mean? I know physically what it means, but so I started falling down the rabbit hole of that. Spiritually, it can mean all kinds of different things. So I would love to see a picture of it. Depending on like where it sits, what shape it is, all that stuff. What color is it?
It's brown.
Yeah, like a light.
Yeah,
brown.
A light brown.
So there's also a meaning behind the different colors spiritually of your eyes and so on. So that I actually have on my phone because I saved it because where'd it go? So that's really interesting to me. Let me find it here. All right, let's see.
Is that on?
No, it's the side, the left one. You have to look up.
There we go.
Can you see it?
So you said it's a light brown?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you would look like where my hands are at. So go ahead and look straight and then like look up right here.
Okay.
So the light brown actually
Yeah.
are people that are very connected to flames and able to manipulate flames, to use flames for meditation. That's really interesting. It also means that you enjoy having a very large spiritual circle. So I would totally advise you to start looking into, so there's do you know what scrying is?
Do I know what is?
Scrying.
No.
Okay, so scrying is where you are able to really focus on something specific, but let your mind drift a little bit. With scrying, you have to have something that, like a recorder going, like a voice recorder on your phone or whatever, because you don't want to be sitting focused on something and you kind of see these things in your mind's eye and then stop to write them down because you're breaking your focus. So the easiest thing to do is to have a voice recorder going. So when you're focused on that flame and you're looking at it and you're seeing these different things, you can just say, you know, I'm seeing blah, 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 blah. And then you can go back and listen to it later and write it down and find out what each one of those things means spiritually. But being that the light brown in particular is something associated with flames, I would absolutely look into scrying with flames. And it's just looking into a fire, basically, and seeing what you see in that fire. That right there may unlock an amazing amount of that knowledge that you had. So I think it's funny that we were talking about trying to unlock those things, and then I mentioned having something up in here, and then you mentioned your eye, and that, I don't know. I just love how nothing is a coincidence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to see a picture of it, just because, especially after those past lives, that last one especially. Yeah, that's funny. I think it's funny. But yeah, that's really, really interesting. You're gonna have a lot of questions once you start unpacking all of this. So feel free to shoot me questions whenever you're like, okay, so I listened to this again, and what about this.
I also thought that like it was really interesting. Like this is the main thing that I kept thinking about like through the whole thing, was when you were telling me about the first soul and how you were asking me if like tall white men and with like long hair make me uncomfortable. It's crazy because like I said before, men in general kind of make me uncomfortable, but I can't, like, there's been times where I've been around like those exact type of men and I just get like really bad anxiety like out of nowhere, and I don't know why. I just don't want to be around them. And now I know, now it makes sense.
Yeah. So it's nothing, you know, in this life that happened or whatever. It's just that's pretty fresh. I mean, that was just 2 lifetimes ago.
Yeah.
And it's also something that, I mean, they cause your demise at a very young age. So it's, how could you not be very leery of them and afraid of them? I mean, so yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
So yeah. It is interesting. It's very interesting. This is why I like doing past life readings. They kind of mentally are exhausting, but I love them so much. I love doing them.
Yeah.
Well, my dear, let me stop this so it can start processing.